Hi, mid-career. So in this video, what I want to do is think about things that grow at constant percentage rates. So, for example, let's imagine we're moving to Sao Paulo, Brazil, and we are looking for a one-bedroom apartment in the center of the city. So according to my research, using the footnotes below, that would run about 400 US dollars if you get a one-bedroom apartment in the center of city. So that's about a little over 2,000 Brazilian real. And so we're going to assume that the inflation rate in Brazil is 4% per year, and it's going to stay constant. So every year, cost of living goes up by 4%. And let's say calculate what is going to be our rent in 4 years from now, in 2024, if we assume our rent follows this increase in inflation of 4% per year. So we can calculate this by taking our $400 rent. So let me set up a little table over here, and then figuring out what is it going to be in the next year. So for example, I could take my $400 of rent and then add to it, so that's my current rent. And now what I want to do is calculate, well, what is going to be the increase in the rent? Well, according to this description, rent is going to go up by 4%. So looking at this calculation, the two components, this corresponds to what my rent is today. This 400 times the 0.04 means I'm taking 4% of 400. So this is calculating by how much is my rent going to increase. And so if we do that arithmetic, we've got 400, and that 400 times 0.04 winds up being 16. So this tells me my rent is going to go up by $16, and so I'm going to have a rent of $416 in the year 2021. So let's fill in the other years using this same sort of logic on the next slide. Okay, so let's summarize this calculation that we did on the previous slide, maybe express it in a slightly different fashion. So to find the rent, we took the current rent, $400, and then added to it a 4% increase. So let me break this down, and I'm going to rewrite this in the following way. So that 400 that came first, I can think about this as 400 times the number 1. Okay, you might think, why am I doing that? We'll see in a second, I hope. And then over here, I'm just going to leave this 400 times 0.04. So all I've done is I've taken the 400 and rewritten it as 400 times 1. And now what I can do is factor out a 400 from both of these two terms in my sum. And so algebraically, I can rewrite this as what I'm going to do is pull the 400 out and pull the 400 out, and then what's left over is the 1 plus the 0.04. Okay, and then finally, just adding that 1 plus the 0.04 in the black parentheses, we've got a formula that says to calculate the new rent in the year 2021, I take my previous rent, which was $400, and multiply by 1.04. So that would give me exactly the same value as we got doing it this way. So you can think of the 1 in this as saying added to the previous amount's rent, and the 0.04 is saying this is how to calculate what the increase is going to be. So if I want to calculate my rent in 2022, for example, I can take my rent in 2021 and then multiply that by this factor of 1.04. Okay, and again, you can think about this is my rent at the start of 2021. This part here is going to calculate how much your rent goes up, and this 1 over here means added to the previous year's total for the rent. And so now doing this calculation, we can get the next value in our next year's rent. So that would be 432.64. And then we can continue on. And so notice, actually, before I do that, that this increase now went up by $16.64. So when you're increasing by a percentage, you're actually, in some sense, earning interest on the interest. So that's why this jump is not going to be a linear absolute change, going to be the same every year, but the increases are changing. So we don't use linear models to represent quantities that are increasing by fixed percentages. But if I wanted to calculate what is my rent, say, going to be in 2023, then I can go ahead and take the rent in 2022, which was $432.64 to be precise, and multiply that by 1.04 again to calculate what is my new rent going to be. And this calculation gives us a rent of almost $450, but not quite. So this would be $449.95. And checking these increases in absolute terms, that has jumped up by even more. And we can multiply this by 1.04 again and get the rent in 2024. And that is an increase in $18. So what we can see is as we're moving along, we're not getting linear growth because the absolute changes are not constant. Every year that goes on, the increase in the rent is not the same. So we've done some calculations here to see how we can do this year by year. Now let's try and generalize this pattern to find a general formula. So if we wanted to calculate what's our rent going to be in the year 2030, is there a way to just calculate that directly, or do I need to go and calculate every single previous year's rent? So we'll find the general formula for this next.